So we've reached the season finale of season 3. Wendy has returned to that shopping center and is mourning the loss of her brother by just drinking a ton of vodka. Meanwhile, Nelson meets Ruth and Marty back at the funeral home with Ben's body to be cremated. And Ruth wants answers, mainly how the hell did this happen? But Marty's sticking with the story of he screwed up. They tracked the phone and they got him. Afterwards, Marty is trying to convince Wendy to come home, but she's just having a tough time with this. But if she thinks she's having a tough time with this, she should head down to Mexico, where Omar is watching the baptism of his newborn baby via Zoom, where the service is interrupted by members of the Laguna Cartel who kill everybody in the church. Luckily, the baby survives. Omar knows he needs to get the kids out of Mexico for their safety and calls Helen down there. He tells Helen that he's losing this drug war, and he wants her to put all of the legitimate assets in the names of his 3 children. She lets him know that trust in estates won't make a difference if Marty Bird drives his business into the ground, and she wants to take control of Bird Enterprises. He might have said no, he might have said yes, we have no idea as the viewer, but when Helen returns, she meets with Charles Wilkes because she wants her name on the casino license, and she assures him that if she gets added to the license, his plans for a hotel and a shopping center would be very much alive. That night, Wendy decides to come home finally because she just ran out of vodka, but she doesn't exactly get the greeting she was expecting when Jonah wants answers to what happened to Ben. He doesn't understand how they're going to continue to work with the person who killed her brother. Marty tells him, we don't really have a choice. The next day, they meet with Helen Pierce, and Wendy reassures her that she's ready to go back to work. Helen lets them know that Omar wants to diversify all of his assets between the 3 of them, and because of this, she needs to become a signatory in Bird Enterprises. Marty finds this interesting and says, well, I would need a reassurance that it's just me and Wendy on the casino license, but Helen tells him emphatically that she has no interest whatsoever in being on a casino license. After the meeting, the two head to Wendy's office where Wendy is convinced that Helen is going to have them killed. But Marty's trying to talk her off the ledge saying, you sacrificed your brother. You couldn't make a bigger sacrifice than that. No matter what Marty says, though, she is convinced that Helen Pierce is going to have them killed. Marty says, fine, then tell Navarro about the sacrifice you made. So Wendy calls Navarro to tell him that her brother knew too much and they had him killed. But Navarro's reaction is basically, I'm not going to pat you on the back for doing what you were supposed to do. He sees right through the plea of loyalty. And now Wendy is really concerned, but she doesn't have much time to think about it because the two are interrupted by Ruth Langmore, who is coming in hot demanding answers. She still doesn't really buy this whole Ben was caught thing. And after talking to Wyatt about it, she decides to go to the Birds face to face and find out exactly what happened to Ben. They keep sticking to the same story, but Ruth is not buying it. Ruth demands that they stop lying and tell her why Ben is dead, and Wendy says, okay, Ben is dead because you stupidly got him out of the hospital where he was safe. Wendy screams at her, I spent my whole life protecting him. This is yours. Wendy then tries to remind Ruth that they dragged her out of that trailer and brought her into their family, but she's still too stupid to listen. And that's when Ruth tries to quit, but Wendy reminds her you can't exactly quit a cartel. Marty tries to chase after her, and Ruth thanks him for all he's done for her, but she says, I'm not your daughter. I don't need to be caught up in your shit. I quit. Ruth then immediately heads to Helen Pierce's place to tell her face to face that I don't have beef with you. I'm not going to come after you. I don't particularly like you, but you need to hear it from me. I quit. I severed ties with the Birds. And then Helen says, well, would you come back to work at the casino if the Birds weren't in the picture? To which Ruth says, I'm not hard to find. Now, the whole situation with Ruth has Darlene Snell thinking, and she asks Wyatt, do you really think she quit the Birds? He said, yeah, it was probably the last straw. I mean, they killed her boyfriend, and they didn't make Frank Cosgrove pay for what he did. So that's got Darlene Snell thinking, and she heads over to Kansas City, meets with Frank Cosgrove Jr., and blows his dick off. I mean, you gotta give it to her. She gives no fucks. We'll get back to Darlene Snell in a second because the Birds have a problem. Wendy gets a phone call from Jim telling her, you didn't hear it from me, but Helen Pierce is getting her name on an expedited casino license. And now they know they really have to act fast. So Wendy comes up with the plan that Marty is going to tell Agent Miller that the Laguna Cartel were the ones that blew up Frank Cosgrove's truck. And because it's a Mexican cartel killing American civilians on American soil, the U.S. government has the authority to go into Mexico and make them pay. The issue is, though, they don't have proof. That is, until Charlotte speaks up and says Jonah has video of it. So Wendy, trying to get the loyalty steered their way, calls Omar and tells him that Marty did it and the U.S. government is ready to push military forces on the Laguna Cartel, but she wants some reassurances first. She wants Helen out of any Bird Enterprise businesses if they help end this war. But Navarro just says, I'll handle my business the way I choose, and then hangs up. And as Charlotte is watching this phone conversation go down, Jonah comes in and says, what's going on? They're trying to get it so Helen doesn't kill us. But Helen is most definitely making plays because she's still their lawyer. So Helen heads to Agent Evans and says that the Birds are willing to testify as informants against the cartel. Agent Evans finds this actions really weird because they've turned down that deal multiple times, but she says, I can't speak for their previous actions, I can only speak for their actions now. Even though Agent Evans knows this is a conflict of interest for Helen, he's still willing to accept the deal. Of course, Marty and Wendy have no idea about this, as they also try to get the FBI on their side. Marty goes to meet with Agent Miller, who earlier in the day arrested Sam for money laundering. And it was a real sad scene because Sam had just proposed to Jade. Marty gives her still shots of the license plates and tells her that if you track the license plates to the companies, to the offshore accounts, you'll see that it was the Laguna cartel who were the ones that killed these men. And Marty had made a plea to Agent Miller earlier in the day basically saying that your integrity is going to cost you your career. You got in this field to do some good and put bad guys in jail, and I'm giving you that opportunity, but you're too stupid to take it. And it seems like that little pep talk has worked as she says, I'll consider it. He tells her that if she doesn't push this through, his family could die, but she still says, I'll consider it. And now we get back to Ruth Langmore, who is out of a job and not exactly looking for one at the moment, but Darlene Snell offers her one anyway. Darlene and Ruth head up to meet with Frank Cosgrove, and she says, look, your boy needed to pay, but I have all this heroin that needs to be distributed, and I'll split it with you 50-50. She also tells him that she's going to build 3 opioid treatment facilities, and the contracts are his if he wants them. And while he'll never bring back his boy's dick, the deal is too good to pass up. And now we get to the job that Ruth is actually offered. Darlene, because she's not getting any younger, wants Ruth and Wyatt to build her heroin business. And upon seeing the poppy plants, seems like Ruth is all in. So while Ruth has her future figured out, the birds don't know if they'll have a future. And Wendy gets a phone call very late at night from Omar telling her that Helen is bringing back his children to Mexico and they're going to have another baptism, and he expects Marty and Wendy to be there. And there'll be a car at their house to pick them up in 15 minutes. And as Helen is getting ready to leave, and she has that FBI deal for Marty in her possession, she gets a knock at the door and it's Jonah holding a shotgun to her. He basically wants her to back off because she killed his uncle and now she's trying to kill his whole family. But she says, they're getting on a plane with me in 15 minutes. Do you really think they would do that if I was trying to kill him? She also reveals to him that it was his mom who actually okayed the hit on Ben. And Jonah doesn't believe it, but the more she talks, the more she makes sense. And sure enough, when Jonah goes home, he finds Ben's ashes. But the car picks up Helen and Wendy and Marty, and they all head to the airstrip. And right before he gets on the plane, Marty gets a phone call from Agent Miller demanding why he's taking Evan's deal and not hers. But of course, Marty has no idea what she's talking about. She says, good, you're not taking that deal. Come over here and let's talk this out. But Marty reveals that he can't because he's getting on a jet. Agent Miller begs him not to get on a plane to Mexico, but Marty doesn't really have a choice because Nelson is standing behind them and he's not letting him go. So the group takes off to Mexico and Marty has no idea if he's walking into an ambush or not. But upon arrival, one of Omar's men shoots Helen in the head, and as her brains are splattered all over the birds, Omar brings him in for a hug and says, today is all about new beginnings. And that is how Season 3 of Ozark ends. Thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to like this video if you got this far. I assume you liked it. Please subscribe to the channel. It helps the channel grow. If you think this video sucked, I mean, they do put a thumbs down there for a reason. There's also a share button for a reason. Sharing is caring. And I try not to read the comments section because it's usually a cesspool that makes me feel bad. So if I don't reply to one of your comments, don't take it personally.